The year is 1866. A train moves through Indiana when armed men swing aboard, pistol whip the express agent, and vanish into the night with $10,000 in gold. The law responds. Sheriffs ride out and stop dead at the county line. Their jurisdiction ends here. The robbers are gone. The gold is gone. And America suddenly realizes it has built an entire country with no system to catch the people destroying it. What came next wasn't justice. It was stranger, more violent, and more profitable. A system so broken it accidentally invented an entirely new profession. And some of those solutions were worse than the original crime. The American West didn't create outlaws. It created the perfect conditions for them to thrive, and then hired desperate, armed, commission-only strangers to clean up the mess. These are the 22 dumbest justice mistakes in American history. And every single one of them made bounty hunters not just possible, but necessary. 1. The county line. In the 19th century American West, a sheriff's authority ended precisely at his county border. One step across that invisible line and he had zero legal power. No right to arrest, no right to pursue, no right to act. Outlaws understood this perfectly. Rob a town, ride 2 hours, and you were legally untouchable. The entire bounty hunting industry was built on this single, catastrophic oversight in the design of American law. 2. The first train robbery. On October 6, 1866, Frank Reno and his brothers boarded an Ohio and Mississippi railway train near Seymour, Indiana, overpowered the guard, and threw a safe out the window. The first peacetime train robbery in American history. The local sheriff pursued them to the county line and turned back. The Renos had just proven that trains crossing dozens of jurisdictions at speed were essentially unpoliceable. Every train robber for the next 30 years took careful notes. 3. The federal gap. The United States federal government had created a vast continental nation and neglected to staff it with law enforcement. U.S. Marshals existed, but almost none of them, covering territories the size of European countries. States had no authority beyond their borders. Federal courts sat hundreds of miles from the crimes they were supposed to adjudicate. The result was a geography-sized loophole, and anyone willing to ride and shoot could exploit it indefinitely. 4. The bail bond disaster. Courts, overwhelmed and understaffed, required defendants to post financial collateral and then release them until trial. It immediately became a catastrophe. Accused men posted bail, walked out of courthouses, and vanished into territories with no extradition agreements and no officers willing to pursue them. Nobody got their money back. Nobody was punished for disappearing. The only logical response was to hire someone whose entire income depended on dragging them back. 5. Horse theft and no enforcement. In the American West, stealing a horse wasn't just theft. It was potentially a death sentence for the victim, left on foot in hostile terrain. Horse theft became a hanging offense, but hanging required catching someone first. Sheriffs couldn't leave their counties. Federal marshals were scarce. So horse theft became one of the first crimes with an unofficial open bounty, because the official system had simply given up on solving it. 6. Allan Pinkerton's vacuum. In 1850, Allan Pinkerton founded the Pinkerton National Detective Agency in Chicago, not out of idealism, but because there was a profitable void where law enforcement was supposed to be. Pinkerton offered cross-state pursuit, undercover infiltration, and centralized intelligence. He charged accordingly. The fact that a private company became America's most effective law enforcement institution for decades is a damning indictment of every public institution that failed before it. 7. Wanted posters without photographs. For most of the 19th century, wanted posters carried written descriptions: medium height, brown hair, scar above the left eyebrow. In a country full of medium-height men with scars, this was nearly useless. Mistaken identity was epidemic. Wrong men were arrested, imprisoned, occasionally lynched. Photographs became available in the 1860s but were rarely standardized until much later. The wanted poster, America's most iconic crime-fighting tool, was for decades almost entirely ineffective. 8. The telegraph advantage. Alan Pinkerton's decisive edge over every local sheriff wasn't manpower. It was the telegraph. While outlaws crossed county lines freely, Pinkertons wired descriptions, routes, and intelligence instantly across hundreds of miles. It sounds basic. It was revolutionary. No public agency had systematically exploited telecommunications this way. Pinkerton invented the coordinated manhunt. The fact that this capability existed inside a private for-profit company meant it was available only to clients who could afford to pay for it. 9. Judge Isaac Parker's territory. In 1875, President Grant appointed Isaac Parker as federal judge for the Western District of Arkansas, a jurisdiction covering 74,000 square miles of Indian territory with virtually no functioning law. Parker issued warrants by the hundreds and recruited deputy marshals to serve them. Over 21 years, he sentenced 160 people to death. He needed an army of commissioned manhunters just to keep the paperwork moving. Parker didn't create bounty hunting. He industrialized it. 10. Bass Reeves. Born into slavery in Arkansas in 1838, Bass Reeves escaped during the Civil War and lived among indigenous nations in Indian Territory, learning languages, customs, and terrain. Judge Parker deputized him in 1875, making Reeves one of the first black federal marshals west of the Mississippi. Over 32 years, he made more than 3,000 arrests and killed 14 men in self-defense. He was never convicted of a crime. By any measure, he was the most effective manhunter in American history. 11. The disguise advantage. Bass Reeves understood something most lawmen didn't. Outlaws who saw a badge ran. So, he rarely showed one. Reeves operated in elaborate disguises, posing as a farmhand, a fellow outlaw, a drifter, sometimes maintaining cover for weeks. He once delivered warrants to 2 outlaws while disguised as a tramp, shared a meal with them, and arrested both the following morning. The legal system had no framework for undercover work. Reeves invented it himself, entirely in the field. 12. Pat Garrett's method. Pat Garrett didn't become sheriff of Lincoln County, New Mexico, because he was the most qualified. He got the job because he personally knew every outlaw in the territory, including William Bonney, known as Billy the Kid, with whom he'd drunk, gambled, and ridden. When the county needed someone to stop the violence, they hired the man with the right friendships. In July 1881, Garrett used that knowledge to track Billy to Fort Sumner and shoot him dead in a darkened room. 13. The Reno Brothers End. The Pinkertons tracked the Reno brothers to a jail in New Albany, Indiana, and then watched as 300 masked men broke in, overpowered the guards, and lynched 3 of the brothers before dawn. No one was prosecuted. The legal system had been so slow and so unable to guarantee a conviction that vigilantes simply bypassed it entirely. The Reno case established the pattern. When justice failed visibly enough, the public replaced it with something faster and considerably more lethal. 14. The Jesse James disaster. Pinkerton agents pursued Jesse James for years, and in 1875, threw an incendiary device through the window of the James family farmhouse in Missouri. It killed Jesse's 8-year-old half-brother and blew off his mother's arm. Jesse was not home. The public outrage was immediate. Pinkerton had just turned America's most wanted outlaw into its most sympathetic figure. Private justice, operating without oversight, had created exactly the propaganda Jesse James needed to survive for 7 more years. 15. No extradition. Between territories. The legal patchwork wasn't just county lines. Entire territories had no extradition agreements with each other. A man wanted for murder in Kansas could ride into Indian Territory and be legally unreachable indefinitely. Federal marshals had cross-territorial authority but almost no resources. This gap is precisely why bounty hunters, operating outside jurisdictional constraints entirely, became so valuable. The law had drawn its own borders around itself, and criminals simply walked around them. 16. Dead or alive. The phrase, dead or alive on a wanted poster wasn't dramatic. It was a legal authorization to kill. With no reliable prison transport and no extradition mechanisms, courts decided returning someone breathing was optional. This formalized something extraordinary. Private citizens could legally execute suspects without trial. No evidence standard, no due process, no appeal. Just a poster, a price, and whoever shot fastest. The frontier had legalized extrajudicial killing and called it law enforcement. 17. The commission-only economy. Bounty hunters received no salary, no pension, no expenses. Every manhunt was a personal financial gamble. Fund your own horse, food, and ammunition, then collect only if you delivered the target. This created deeply perverse incentives. Hunters had every reason to fabricate evidence, pursue the highest-paying bounties regardless of actual guilt, or cut corners that destroyed innocent lives. The system designed to supplement justice was structurally built to undermine it. Nobody in government seemed to care. 18. The Vigilance Committees. In 1851, San Francisco merchants, fed up with crime and a court system they considered corrupt, formed a vigilance committee, a private organization that arrested, tried, and executed people outside any legal framework. They hanged 4 men and deported dozens more. The committee reconvened in 1856 and hanged 2 more. Organized, funded, operating in broad daylight, and facing no legal consequences, they sent an unmistakable message. With enough money and community backing, you could simply replace the law. 19. The railroad's role. The Transcontinental Railroad, completed in 1869, created the most target-rich criminal environment in history. Trains carried gold, payroll, and mail across thousands of unpatrolled miles. Railroad companies, facing investor losses, hired Pinkerton agents directly, privatizing law enforcement on a massive scale. The railroads became private states with their own police, accountable to shareholders rather than citizens. The bounty system scaled from individual manhunts to full corporate security contracts almost overnight. 20. The bail bondsman is born. As the 19th century progressed, a new professional emerged, the bail bondsman, who posted financial guarantees for defendants in exchange for a fee, then hired bounty hunters to retrieve fugitives. In 1873, the U.S. Supreme Court validated this arrangement in Taylor v. Tatum, legalizing private capture of bail jumpers. One businessman posting bail, another hunting jumpers, both profiting from a court system too overwhelmed to manage its own defendants. The Wild West had finally found its paperwork. 21. The modern inheritance. Today, the United States remains one of only 2 countries in the world, alongside the Philippines, where commercial bail bonding and for-profit bounty hunting are legal. The industry generates over $2 billion annually. Bounty hunters in most states can enter homes without warrants, cross state lines without extradition paperwork, and use force that would be illegal for police. Every one of those powers traces directly to the legal failures of the 19th century frontier. Failures no one ever fully corrected. 22. Bass Reeves's last case. In 1907, at 68 years old, Bass Reeves received one of the most difficult warrants of his career. The fugitive was his own son, Benny Reeves, wanted for the murder of his wife. Bass served the warrant himself, arrested his son, and delivered him to court without comment. Benny was convicted and later paroled. Reeves retired the following year. 32 years of service. Over 3,000 arrests. One man who proved that a broken system could still produce someone who simply did the job right.